The three children screamed at the same time. Before them, the earth tore open, and from the abyss rose a living sea of fire. Millions of human souls burned there, transparent like black embers, suspended in flames, writhing and screaming in agony. The screams were deafening, bodies twisted as if being torn from themselves. And among them, horrible demons, repugnant animal forms, black and bronze in color like burning coals, dragged souls to the bottom of the abyss. Lucia felt she would die in that instant. Jacinta fell to the ground, trembling and sobbing. Francisco turned white as wax, unable to speak. They had just seen hell. And the Mother of God, standing beside them, said in a soft and sorrowful voice, "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart." It was the 13th of July, 1917. Europe bled in the First World War. More than 1 million men had already died in the trenches, drowned in mud, poisoned by gas, torn apart by machine guns. Russia was on the verge of a revolution that would bring to the world the greatest atheistic regime in history, responsible for the deaths of millions and the relentless persecution of the Church. In Portugal, the Masonic Republic had expelled religious orders, prohibited Catholic teaching in schools, and executed priests. Militant atheism advanced like a plague, and it was in this context of darkness that God chose 3 poor and illiterate children to receive messages that would change the destiny of entire nations. Lucia dos Santos was 10 years old. She was serious, determined, accustomed to the hard work of tending sheep under the relentless sun of the mountains. Her cousins, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, were 9 and 7 years old. Francisco was contemplative, almost silent, with a spiritual maturity that was frightening. He did not hear the words of Our Lady, he only saw her, but that was enough. Jacinta, the youngest, had a heart of fire. After the vision of hell, she could no longer sleep without crying. She repeated endlessly, "Poor sinners. If they prayed, they wouldn't go there." The 3 children lived a life of extreme simplicity. They prayed the rosary, tended the sheep, obeyed their parents. They could neither read nor write, but they knew God with an intimacy that few theologians achieve. Since May of that year, a woman dressed in light brighter than the sun had been appearing to them over a small holm oak in Cova da Iria. She presented herself as Our Lady of the Rosary. She asked them to return there on the 13th of each month, and she promised a great miracle in October so that everyone would believe. The children obeyed, even in the face of mockery and violence. They were imprisoned by the local administrator, who locked them in a cell with criminals and threatened to boil them alive in oil if they did not reveal the secrets. They preferred to die. Jacinta, only 7 years old, told the jailer, "You can kill us, but we won't tell what Our Lady told us." They were released, but the persecution continued. Their own families doubted. The local parish priest suspected it was the work of the devil, but they remained firm, because what they saw and heard was too sacred to be betrayed. It was at the 3rd apparition, in July, that the vision of hell occurred. Our Lady opened her hands, and from them flowed a light that penetrated the earth like a sword. For an instant that seemed like an eternity, the children saw what few human beings have seen and survived to tell, the reality of hell. It was not an allegory. It was not a pious symbol. It was a real place where real souls, human souls, created in the image of God, suffered for all eternity because they chose to live and die far from Him. Lucia would describe decades later, the demons were distinguished by horrible and repugnant forms of frightening and unknown animals, but transparent like black burning coals. The souls looked like black and transparent embers, floating in fire without ever being completely consumed. The suffering was eternal. There was no hope. There was no way out. There was no end. Lucia wrote later, "If Our Lady had not promised to take us to heaven, I believe we would have died of fright and terror. But the Virgin Mary did not show that vision to terrorize them without purpose. She showed it because she wanted to save them and save the entire world. After the vision came the first secret. The war devastating Europe was near its end. But if men did not stop offending God, an even worse war would begin in the next pontificate. And there would be a sign. A night illuminated by an unknown light would be the warning that God was about to punish the world for its crimes. And Our Lady did not speak idly. On the night of January 25th to 26th, 1938, the sky over all of Europe was illuminated by an aurora borealis so intense that thousands of people thought it was a fire. Newspapers reported the phenomenon. Lucia, who was already a religious sister, immediately recognized the sign. She wrote to the bishop, "God is going to punish the world for its crimes through war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and the Holy Father." Less than 2 months later, Hitler invaded Austria. World War II was beginning. The second secret was even more grave. Our Lady spoke about Russia. She said that country would spread its errors throughout the world, promoting wars and persecutions of the Church. Entire nations would be annihilated. Faith would be attacked as never before in history. Millions of souls would be dragged to hell by the seduction of atheistic materialism. And here it is necessary to understand the prophetic depth of these words. In July 1917, Russia was still a Christian Orthodox empire. The communist regime would only seize power in October of that year, 4 months after the apparition. 3 illiterate children had no way of knowing what was coming. But Our Lady knew, and she warned. What followed was the greatest bloodbath in human history. Stalin killed 20 million people. Mao Zedong, influenced by Soviet Marxism, killed 70 million. Pol Pot in Cambodia exterminated 1/3 of the country's population. In the Soviet Union, 40,000 churches were destroyed or converted into warehouses and prisons. 200,000 priests, nuns, and bishops were executed or sent to the Gulag. Millions of Catholics and Orthodox were martyred simply for professing faith in Christ. Children were indoctrinated from the cradle to deny God. Atheism became the state religion. Russia spread its errors exactly as Our Lady had predicted, and the world paid the price. But, and here the voice of the Virgin Mary filled with hope, there was a solution. If the Pope, in union with all the bishops of the world, consecrated Russia to her Immaculate Heart, that country would be converted and the world would have peace. Otherwise, the errors would spread, nations would be annihilated, and the Holy Father would suffer greatly. Lucia spent her entire life begging the popes to make the consecration. Pius XI hesitated. Pius XII made a consecration, but without explicitly mentioning Russia. Paul VI renewed the consecration, but without all the bishops. Finally, in 1984, John Paul II, the Pope who survived the 1981 assassination attempt, made the solemn consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, united with the bishops of the entire world. 5 years later, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Union began to crumble. In 1991, the communist regime ended. Russia once again permitted public worship. Churches were reopened. Priests returned to celebrating Mass freely. Our Lady fulfilled her promise. And then there was the third secret. Lucia wrote it in 1944, by order of the bishop, but it would only be revealed in 2000. The Vatican kept the sealed envelope for decades. Speculation ran wild. Some said it contained prophecies about the end of the world, others about apostasy within the Church. When Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger finally read it publicly, on May 13, 2000, the world discovered a terrifying vision. Lucia saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. The flames seemed about to set the world on fire, but they were extinguished upon contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated from her right hand. The angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance!" Next, Lucia saw a bishop dressed in white, the Pope, climbing a steep mountain, at the top of which was a rustic cross made of logs. He was crossing a city in ruins, half trembling, staggering in pain, praying for the souls of the corpses he found along the way. Upon reaching the top, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. Other bishops, priests, religious, and lay people were martyred in the same way. Angels collected the blood of the martyrs with crystal watering cans, and with it irrigated the souls approaching God. John Paul II, upon reading this vision after the 1981 assassination attempt, recognized himself there. He was shot in street, Peter's Square, exactly on May 13th, the anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima. The bullet passed through his abdomen, came within millimeters of the aorta, and should have killed him instantly, but it didn't. A maternal hand, as he himself said, guided the bullet's trajectory. He survived, and he had the bullet set in the crown of the image of Our Lady of Fatima as a sign of gratitude. But the third secret was not limited to that assassination attempt. It spoke of the martyrdom of the Church in the 20th century and beyond. Millions of Christians were killed because of their faith, more martyrs in that century than in all previous centuries combined. The vision also spoke of the city in ruins, of the staggering Pope, of the dead souls along the way. It spoke of a church persecuted, attacked from within and without, but which continues climbing the mountain toward the cross, because the destiny of the church is not comfort, but martyrdom, not earthly glory, but the cross. And only through the cross comes resurrection. Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia understood this profoundly. Francisco, before dying at 11 years old, spent entire days in adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, saying he wanted to console Jesus, who is sad because of the sins of the world. Jacinta, before dying at 10 years old, offered all her sufferings, the extremely high fever, the purulent wound in her chest, the loneliness in the hospital far from her mother, for the conversion of sinners and for the Holy Father. She said, "I suffer for love of Jesus, to console the Immaculate Heart of Mary, for the conversion of sinners and for the Holy Father." Lucia lived to 97 years old, becoming a discalced Carmelite. She kept the secrets with absolute fidelity. She lived hidden from the world, praying and doing penance. And she repeated until the end of her life, "Russia will be converted, but before that many souls will go to hell. Therefore, pray the rosary every day." If stories like this touch your faith and make you reflect on eternity, subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us continue spreading the truths of our faith and the works that reveal God's mercy. The 3 secrets of Fatima changed the world because they revealed eternal truths at a moment when the world most needed to hear them. They revealed that hell is real, that human history is not governed by chance, but by divine providence, that God warns before punishing because He is Father and wants to give His children the chance to repent. They revealed that the Church suffers, but is not defeated, that the blood of martyrs irrigates the faith of future generations. Our Lady did not ask for impossible things. She asked for prayer, penance, and consecration. She asked for the daily rosary. She asked for sacrifices for the conversion of sinners. And she promised that whoever consecrated themselves to her Immaculate Heart would never be lost. The 3 children of Fatima saw what few have seen, and they lived accordingly. May the terror of those children before hell awaken us. May the example of Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia inspire us to live each day in a state of grace. And may the Immaculate Heart of Mary be our safe refuge today, at the hour of our death, and on the day of judgment.